Welcome, everyone. My name is Artemis Javanshir, and I am a member of Public Relations Committee of California Zoroastrian Center. This committee was established in 2020 by the board of directors of the time, and we respond to inquiries coming through CZC about Zoroastrian religion. We offer various classes, and we have a vibrant virtual fellowship community. We are very glad to have you join us today. Today's talk is part 4 of the Devotion to Wisdom series, which has been offered through this committee by Mr. Navid Mansourian. The other parts are available on our website if interested. I will provide the website link shortly in the chat box, and feel free to email us using pr@czc.org. Mr. Caleb Goodfellow will introduce our speaker and lead the Q&A portion of the talk. Caleb is a student of the Gathas, and we were very proud to celebrate his Sedra Pushi in 2023 and officially welcome him to the community. He has a very successful and informative YouTube channel with insightful information about Zarathustra's teachings. We encourage you to visit his YouTube channel, and we will put the link in the chat box shortly. We also want to thank Mr. Felix Scholler, another member of our community, who is kindly helping us behind the scenes. The recording of this talk will be available in a week by visiting our website. We will put the address in the chat box. Dear Caleb, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Artemis John. Thank you. In case you guys aren't aware who Navid Mansourian is, Navid has been a student of the Gathas and Zarathustra's teachings for 25 years. He helps us share Zoroastrian philosophy through a variety of talks and social media. Currently, he serves on the California Zoroastrian Center's Public Relations Committee, helping people who would like to learn more about Zoroastrian philosophy. On a more personal note, he's one of the wisest people I've ever met and has a very, very deep understanding of the philosophy of Zarathustra and the message of the Gathas. And he's going to share that all with you today. The floor is yours, Navid. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Caleb. I wasn't able to unmute myself for that. Now,
Yeah.
Can everyone hear me okay? Awesome. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. I'm so honored to serve on the California Zoroastrian Center's Public Relations Committee. It's been such an amazing experience learning from each other and growing together as our community expands, just as Zarathustra intended. So I'm very excited to be here with you all. Let me share my screen briefly. The plan for today is, let me see if this comes out. Okay. Is that coming up for everyone? Okay, wonderful. So yes, the plan for today is Devotion of Wisdom Part 4. And this series of talks has been exploring Mazdayasna, or Devotion of Wisdom, per the Gathas of Zarathustra. And we want to explore the conventional notions of heaven and hell, and whether these ideas are compatible with the modern and living philosophy of the Gathas. And as always, these talks, we intend them as a thought catalyst. So I'll talk for about 25 minutes to share some ideas and thoughts. And the goal is for that to spur discussion that we will then dive into together. And that's what I'm most excited about. So really looking forward to our talk together. So I want us to think about just a quick simplification. I borrowed this from Dina McIntyre, who I'm honored has joined us in the past. But the Gathas teach us a framework for self-realization and realization of the divine. And I think this is a timeless worldview, a system, a way of looking at our reality. And in essence, it's that we are confronted by choices throughout our lives. And then we should use our minds and hearts, all of our faculties, to search for the truth, for what is right and good in all aspects of reality and for all existence. And we call this Asha. Then we should choose it with each thought, word, and action by engaging the world, not rejecting it. I think this is a core distinction for us. that I'm very, I feel makes a lot of sense. And that then leads for us to kind of improve, heal, perfect our world and ourselves, leading to us becoming complete and whole and one with the divine. And one of the most beautiful metaphors that I love is the endless lights that we use in the Gathas, that Zarathustra uses in the Gathas. So I will reference this throughout the talk because I find it so such a beautiful visual to have in our minds. So with that framework or that general, system in mind, why talk about the notions of heaven and hell, right? And I think there's a few reasons in my mind that this is relevant to both Zoroastrians in our community and those who are interested to learn more about Zoroastrian philosophy. One is that I think there's a misconception out there. You see in a lot of videos, you see in a lot of talks that a lot of core ideas of maybe more common or more prevalent religions like Abrahamic religions around, good versus evil and heaven or hell, it's referenced that these are kind of going back to the ideas of Zoroastrianism. That Zoroastrianism is somehow the source of these ideas. And I think this gets confused in a variety of ways. Part of it is the second point, when in the later texts in our traditions do speak to these ideas, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but it's not in the Gathas, at least not in the way that I think we think about them conventionally today. And that's part of the major premise of the discussion we want to have together. But I think the third point is the most important one. And that is that these notions actually distract from or inhibit our spiritual growth and our purpose, like our purpose to improve, to heal all existence. And we'll kind of talk through this together, but I really think this holds us back, which is why I think it's important to talk about this and have an open discussion. So let's first level set on what are we talking about with notions of heaven and hell. And I think the core ideas here is that heaven and hell is coming from a very distinct paradigm. It's basically a fear-based paradigm, looking at the idea that humankind is to receive, one part is a final judgment from God based on their faith and compliance, which in a lot of ways is a carrot and stick style paradigm. So heaven is the carrot. It's a place of reward. It's a place of, it's described many different ways in many different religions, but a place of happiness, of bliss, of enjoying oneself forever. And it's regarded as the place where God, the angels, and blessed spirits all go after death. It's a destination of sorts. And again, it's a reward given for compliance and faith for the prescribed religion. Hell is the opposite. It's the fear-based stick saying, hey, this is a place of punishment forever. This is torment. This is wickedness. It's where evil resides, and you are condemned for all eternity when you're in this place. So are these ideas compatible with the Gathas? I propose that they are not. And I want us to look at this together. Hopefully we can have a great discussion. But I think as we look through, my goal is that we will have seen that the core concepts of the Gathas are not compatible with these ideas as they are described in other religions. So to do that, let's dive in a little bit on the framework of the Gathas and really the divine aspects, which are kind of a framework, I think, of realizing the divine and also self-realization as a result. So you may have heard of these as Emeshaspentas, but I think to recap the overall philosophy of Zarathustra, core point one is goodness and truth. The divine is wholly good in Zoroastrian philosophy, beneficial, our friend and our ally. Asha is the ideal, perfect, and wholly good order of existence. It's entirely good. It's the way existence should be. Now, humankind, through free will and growth, is basically an ally with the divine. We're free to choose, to learn from our choices, and adjust. We can grow and realize Asha through our thoughts, words, and deeds, very similar to the system we described at the beginning. Now, this leads to realizing wisdom more and more. We know in the Gathas that all of the divine aspects are attainable by us, if, imperfectly at first, but over time, as we seek to realize truth and wisdom, we basically become more and more complete. And this mortal existence, this life we have, and the experiential learning that we go through is the matrix for the spiritual growth. This leads to healing existence. And this is a core central aspect of Zarathustra's message. We cannot just save ourselves, quote unquote. In fact, the message is quite different. We must work together and heal all of existence. So we do this by actively engaging life and helping others to grow. No one can do this in isolation, and it kind of is definitely not a transactional worldview and system of beliefs. It's not just about you, it's about all of existence progressing together. And that will then lead us to completeness. So the fact that humankind and the divine are parts of the same whole. And by progressing all of existence, we become complete and we realize the divine ourselves and reaching an enlightened state of being that transcends the need for mortal existence. And we become part of the endless lights. Again, this beautiful metaphor that we see throughout. So as we dive a little bit deeper and look at the Gathas and some core concepts, the purpose of our existence is to evolve spiritually, and life is the matrix for our growth, as we were just talking about. So right now, we are a state of being, or in a state of being that is a mixture of harmful and more beneficial. And I mean, all of us can probably testify that, or admit to the fact that no one is doing everything in an entirely beneficial way. We're all learning, we're all growing. And the ideal in which that we are striving for is completely good and beneficial. And that growth, that evolution, if you will, is the way it comes through our experiences in life. And the way that our reality is ordered through Asha includes cause and effect and the law of consequences. And this is where we learn via our free will and via our choices. Our good mind enables us to comprehend truth, and when we experience harmful or bad consequences of a choice, it informs our understanding and our compassion. So this frees us from the paradigm of fear. Through cause and effect, we learn from our choices. And this innovation kind of breaks the need or the system for obedience to be required to win favor and avoid punishment. There is no punishment or forgiveness needed. The purpose of the law of consequences is actually enlightenment. It's our growth. So our mortal existence, again, is enabling all of the experiences for our spiritual growth and to realize Asha and the divine. So we can start to see how the idea of a final judgment based on commandments, static commandments, is not going to be compatible with this worldview. So how many of you have heard of Hashem Vuhu, right? Definitely, most of us, a lot of us. For folks who haven't heard of it, I think Hashem Vuhu, as Dr. Jaffer used to refer to, is the main motto of the Zoroastrian belief system. And I think that's a very accurate description. Hashem Vuhu, and mind you, using the translated imperfect word of righteousness here for Asha, sometimes also truth, Hashem Vuhu says, righteousness is the best good. It is radiant happiness, and radiant happiness comes to the person to whom righteousness is for the sake of the best righteousness alone. And this is a core point that I think is worth spending some time on. So the Gathas teaches us an ever-fresh way of life, and that's because as we always seek Asha, we are constantly growing. And the message here tells us that when you seek Asha for its own sake, but not for any other reason, not to go to heaven, not for some other reward or personal gain, not for the fear of hell or bad karma, but simply for its own sake, this leads to an enlightened state of joy. We use the word ushta in Avestan. And this is its own reward, and it naturally radiates to all of existence, which I think is a really profound, beautiful thought. I mean, Hashem Vuhu is really what first, really brought this home for me, the center of the philosophy. And this is why I think the main motto really is true. And we can see then, if we are seeking truth for the sake of it alone, then clearly this is not compatible with a system of being kind of transactionally rewarded or punished based on commandments. Then we continue on the idea that the search for truth is dynamic and ongoing. This is a clear theme throughout the Gathas. So to be aligned with Asha, we must consult the most current understanding of our ages to find what is true and right in both existences of mind and matter for all of life. So the life of a Zoroastrian is to always question, reflect, learn, and grow. We know this in our community, but we don't have any conflict between science and religion, right? For us, our belief system is referred to in many ways, but I think one of them, again, Dana Vangui, is about devotion to wisdom everywhere, and we should seek it in all places. And in the physical realm, this is learning about our existence. In the mental realm, this is all about learning about our choices and how it impacts things. And these two existences come together, and Asha is subsequently incremental. As we seek truth, as we seek to grow, as we learn more about science and physics and the way the world is ordered, and we learn more about our choices and the cause and effect and how that multiplies across billions of human beings, we continue to learn and grow. And this experience-based growth is kind of a core part of how we develop and make the world better. So we can start to see again that the idea of reward and punishment based on static commandments or by tests of faith, like some of these ideas go back to, if we would only believe X or if we would only believe Y. You know, with all due respect, I think we want to respect all other belief systems, and I think that's a very important thing. But I think we should talk about what is distinct about this worldview and why it is different. And I think we essentially let go of this fear-based paradigm of looking for something, and are in fact then seeking it ourselves and looking to grow together. All right, so it sounds like we're getting a lot of evidence, a lot of patterns I see here about the Gathas and these not matching the conventional ideas of heaven or hell. But what about the Chinvat bridge? Have folks heard about this bridge? Maybe a few folks. This is sometimes referred to as a bridge of judgment, a bridge of the separator. Is this about a final judgment? I think this is a part of confusion for some people, so I wanted to talk about it. I do not think so. I think the Chinvat bridge is an allegory for our spiritual evolution. And we cross this bridge. It's a metaphor, again, an allegory of when we cross this bridge, when we are complete. We talked about us being in this kind of growing mixed state of being, you know, more beneficial or harmful and a mixture of things. And when we get to that complete, realized divine state of being entirely good, that is when we would cross this bridge metaphorically, right? And I think Dina, actually, if you ever come back and reference it later as well, but if you read some of Dina's articles, she has an amazing breakdown of all of the reasons and really how this is clearly a allegory for our spiritual evolution. So I thought, you know, for us to look at this together, we should look at the Gathas, look at Yasna 4610 as one example. And we know that the Gathas are thought provokers. So to understand an allegory, we need to kind of look at and analyze and reflect more together. So looking at Yasna 4610, it reads, "Whoever, man or woman, does what thou, O Mazda Ahura, knowest to be the best in life, whoever does right for the sake of right," sounds like Ashimbahu, right? "Whoever in authority governs with the aid of the good mind," so one of the divine aspects, "I shall bring all these to join in songs of thy praise. Forth shall I with them cross the bridge of judgment." So again, we hear the word judgment, and I think it sometimes triggers our biases living in a world dominated by, you know, other religious ideas. But I see this as a real attainment of the divine aspects to fully realize the divine. And when it says, "Forth shall I with them cross the bridge," I think that's what he's saying. When I fully realize all of the divine aspects, then that's when I cross, right? So that's when we are fully complete. So the Chinvat bridge is an allegory for crossing from our current state of being, which is a mix of harmful and beneficial, to the entirely good state, fully aligned with the divine. So then, as we look into Gathas and talk about the Chinvat bridge, another core point is the Chinvat bridge is actually not linked to heaven or hell. There's no mention. I mean, heaven or hell really, in the way that we think of them, are not mentioned in the Gathas. Later texts do have a different perspective. And maybe quickly to touch on that, I think what's important to think about with the later text is that, many of these, whether it's the Bundeshicht or the Ardaviraftnama, these were written many, many years, 1,000+ years after the Gathas, at a time when Avestan was probably not well understood with those communities. And the ideas presented reflect, maybe the author or their worldview of that time or their understanding of that time. So I would kind of leave it up to, each of us to maybe reflect and think about how much do those ideas, mean to us, or how much those documents mean to us, and how compatible are the ideas with the ideas presented in the Gathas, which is the core of our philosophy. So what does the Gathas say about heaven or hell, or kind of good outcomes or bad outcomes again? Because I think the concept of heaven and hell is not mentioned. So again, there's a lot of beautiful allegories, and that's what we see a lot in the Gathas. So when one is fully aligned with the divine, the good outcomes that come from this are described in a few different ways. One is as the most good existence and the most good thinking. We saw in Asham Vuhu that Asha is definitely mentioned as its own reward, resulting in a radiant, joyful bliss, so a bliss that spreads naturally to others. And there is a completeness, a serenity, a peace, a wholeness that comes from the full realization of the divine aspects. So the path to the divine is divine, essentially. So the path and the realization are one. And an existence that results from this is healed. But when we say healed, it's healed from untruth. It's that's the core part here. I know people like to think of druj, the Western word, as like the lie. And I think lie might confuse in our English words. I think untruth, it's basically the being farther away from the truth of how things should be. And the other beautiful allegory that we have is the house of song. And I think this is just a really beautiful, soulful way of thinking about what a good existence is, kind of thinking about the beautiful energy and emotion and kind of mental state we have when we hear beautiful music, and thinking about that this is something that we create, right? A song isn't just happening around you, right? Like we have to act as human beings to create music. And we work together often, which I think is a beautiful metaphor as well for the message in the Gathas. So what about the bad outcomes? And like similar to how Asha is described in the Gathas, generally we look at the opposites and the way that not being aligned with Asha or making more harmful choices, they're described as kind of a bad existence or the most bad existence, the house of worst thinking or the house of untruth. And untruth, if you really think about it, leaves us in darkness. It leads to unhappiness and distress because we're making choices without all the right information. It's essentially the opposite of the divine aspects. So when I look at these descriptions, the conclusion I draw is that, heaven or hell is not some destination that we go to at some point later, right? These are kind of outcomes from our decisions and where we are in realizing the divine and how closer and closerly we are aligned with Asha and the truth. And I think, again, when we look at these allegories, especially the thinking, the description of thinking, right? Being most good thinking, the worst thinking, these cannot be, a destination at the end of the day. This has to be housed internally. And that leads to this next point here, where I think that the idea of the best and worst existences being, again, descriptive ways of thinking about states of minds that start in our mortal lives as a result of our choices is pretty clear then. We're not being sent somewhere through our choices and through our states of mind. And this is going back earlier to why I think the topic is important, because our worldview here matters. Our worldview leads to our state of mind leads to our thoughts, our words, and our actions. And we know there's a connection here when we look at modern understandings of psychology and behavior. And I wanted to highlight Yasna 30.3 and 4, because they emphasize here the idea of these kind of two ways of being. And I think, again, this gets misunderstood often as, absolute good and absolute evil, but I don't think it's that way, right? It says that In the beginning, there were two primal spirits, twins spontaneously active. And I think twins is a really important word to pause on. These are the good and the evil in thought and in word and in deed. Between these two, let the wise choose aright. Be good, not base. And when these twin spirits came together at first, they established life and the denial of life. And so shall it be till the world will last. The worst existence shall be the lot of the followers of evil, and the state of best consciousness be the reward of the righteous. So I think some key points here that really stand out for me is that twins have to be housed in one container, right? And I think what I propose is twins are, again, housed in our individual minds, in our individual beings. So these are ways of being. And it is then realized through our choice of thoughts, words, and deeds. And it makes a lot of sense, right? If we are choosing a constructive, a beneficial way of being, it establishes life, as it says. And the denial of life, the denial of kind of the opposite of that, the lack of progression and growth and creation comes from the untruth, right? And I know it gets translated here as good and evil, but I think that's another way to think about it again, is that as we come to align ourselves closer and closer towards Asha, towards the truth, then we can get and achieve the state of best consciousness, which is the reward of the righteous. So again, going back to those allegories, the best consciousness is the reward. So it's a state of mind. The next point I wanted to emphasize here is the relationship of God and humankind is really important and is a key part of us thinking through this idea of heaven or hell. Because in that idea, you have an authoritarian superpower, superhuman power that is basically transactionally rewarding or punishing you based on something that you were asked to do. That's just not the relationship of Ahura Mazda or the divine in Mazdayasna. The relationship we have, which is core in the Gathas, is described as a friend to a friend, an ally and a partner. It's a paradigm of mutual love and interconnectedness. So the divine isn't something external to judge or save or punish us. We are our own saviors. We are realizing the divine within. And as we grow and we learn from our choices via free will, like we discussed, we evolve towards the divine aspects and become complete and one with the divine. This is a very, very different kind of set of ideas. And I think a really interesting idea is that we do hear that this growth or this realization of the divine is guaranteed because of the concept of free will and learning through cause and effect from the law of consequences. So if we're constantly growing and if we're constantly learning and iteratively gaining understanding, that isn't compatible with static set of commandments. And it is definitely a different relationship than that of what we understand the Gathas teaches about the divine and humankind. So imagine this guarantee, right? And I think it's not a guarantee in a way that, again, things are predetermined, but I think it's a philosophical proposal from Zarathustra that evil or kind of untruth or the way that the kind of destructive, less beneficial way of being will eventually be defeated. And Yasna 49.3, in this case, translation is from Insler, I think does a good way of explaining this. It says, however, it has been fated for this world, wise one, that the truth is to be saved for its good preference, that deceit is to be destroyed for its false profession. By reason of this, I am eager for the alliance of good thinking, in order to ban all the deceitful persons from our company. So I think what this is really getting at is that, truth gets reinforced, as we were talking about in this framework. When you do something good, it will adjust your preferences. So as we learn from our choices and their consequences, it adjusts our subsequent choices in thousands of big and small ways. Now, this is not always an easy process. In fact, I think it's quite a difficult process and one that needs to compound with each thought, word, and deed over a lifetime, and is the purpose of mortal life. And this multiplies by billions of human beings. So I think it's a lot of work, but I think it does make sense to me that the more eventually, since there's always a cause and effect, eventually we will learn. It reminds me of a modern pop song or a modern song that I like a lot. And the core lyric in it says, if life keeps asking you the same questions, you haven't learned the lessons. Right. So that's kind of the idea. It's like, hey, there's constantly something happening. And I know it might feel overwhelming for all the problems and all the things that exist in existence. But if you think about this coming together in a beautiful concert of billions of living beings, that over time, I think we are incrementally improving. And we do have evidence to see this in the world, right? The world is advancing in many ways over time. And where it is not, it is our duty as Zoroastrians and honestly as human beings to help make it better. So that leads to banning deceit. And how do we ban deceit? The Zoroastrian view is not, to force other people, because again, it doesn't change minds that way. We have to change minds, help people through free will understand and realize the truth. And you do this only through kind of having the experiences that you need, each individual needs to grow and learn. So I think that's how you kind of ban the deceitful persons, essentially, is by helping to ban deceit, robbing kind of untruth from any substance in our existence today. And that's where you create the best consciousness. I think we can control behavior, and we see that in society with commandments and fear, but it doesn't create an elevated state of consciousness. And I think that is another core point about why I think it's important to talk about this topic. And we want to have the right motivation and intentionality for our growth. All right, so wrapping up, thank you all for bearing with me for this period. I think we have looked at a lot of different evidence from the Gathas. For me, it stands out that the conventional ideas of heaven and hell as destinations, as places of reward or punishment from a final judgment, are just not compatible with the core ideas of Mazdayasna per the Gathas. I think the point here to think about is free will. This is the core aspect, and the fact that we are learning through experiences. This is required for our spiritual growth, and it's contrary to a paradigm of obedience and faith. This idea that we would be, receiving rewards or punishments also doesn't compute with the purpose of growing from our choices. That's the reward, right? Is growing from our choices, the evolution, and reaching an entirely beneficial state of being. So as we heal all of existence, we will realize Zarathustra's notion of the best reward, which is an existence itself that is wisdom personified, an entirely beneficial state of being. And we then become complete and one with the divine, part of the beautiful endless lights. So with that, I wanted to wrap up the talk with a beautiful quote that is not from necessarily Zoroastrian, but I think a very Zoroastrian idea. And some of you may have seen this. It's often accredited to Friedrich Nietzsche, although I haven't been able to find the source, so I'm hesitant to call that out and say, but I think the idea is really beautiful. It says that I was in darkness, but I took 3 steps and found myself in paradise. The first step was a good thought, the second, a good word, and the third, a good deed. And I think this really summarizes a lot of what we talked about. The hell, so to speak, is the darkness. It's being away from making choices that are helpful. And how do you get towards the paradise or the heaven is through taking steps towards Asha, towards the divine. And we have to start with ourselves in life and make thoughts, speak good words, and do good deeds, reflect and repeat that process over and over again to develop ourselves. And then we'll do that to work together and grow this existence and improve this existence together. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I wanted to quickly acknowledge some great resources and amazing scholars. Again, so grateful to have Dina McIntyre here with us today. She's the top of the list. Her website is amazing. Also, she has a CCC seminar called Liberating Zarathustra's Relevance. I would highly recommend taking a look at those videos and series of talks. Dr. Katie Irani and Dr. Ali Jafari have amazing works, and I've learned so much from them. And if you want to learn more, please look at the public relations website that Artemis John mentioned earlier in the talk. And there's a lot of these resources linked there. And I really appreciate all of your time. Wishing you all Ushta, radiant happiness, and looking forward to our discussion together. I'll hand it over to Caleb.